what are my thoughts on President Trump's $5.7 billion wall on the Mexican border? Coming from someone who is a white Hispanic of Mexican descent, who's not a Republican or a Democrat, but instead a Libertarian. I think I have an interesting perspective to offer because I'm a little bit everywhere, you know? I represent many viewpoints all in one. And it definitely helps that I'm not either a Republican or Democrat. I'm not at all. I'm Libertarian, who happens to be of Mexican descent, who happens to be white and Hispanic. And if it weren't for my Mexican heritage, I would not exist. That's a quarter of who I am. So what do I think about the wall? I think it's easily absurd. Yeah, I mean, haven't you watched on Netflix? You've seen Adam Ruins Everything. He has an episode about immigration. And I had so many other reasons why, obviously, I thought it was a silly idea to build a wall. But he pointed out the most obvious thing, and that is, he said, most people who come here illegally from Mexico don't even cross the border. They get on a plane as a visitor, and they just never go back to the United States. They just stay in the United States, and that's how most of them get here. So build the wall, spend the $5.7 billion on the wall, and let people keep visiting here via plane. All politics aside, just thinking of it from a rational point of view, based on what I just said. And then there's the other aspect of it. There's the black market. There's the fact that you take away the workforce that undocumented Mexican workers provide for our country. Take that away. Take away the people who are going to be picking your fruits and vegetables, building your homes, slaughtering the animals that you're going to be eating. All of that manual labor that pays too low for anybody else to want to do. We don't want those jobs. And the irony is people, I guess, who are very big on supporting the wall would say, yeah, but they're coming over here and they're taking our jobs. No, they're not. They're not taking the jobs that you want. You won't work so hard for so little. Trust me, you're not going to be interested in barely being paid minimum wage. I don't know exactly, but it's got to, whatever. It's lower pay for harder work that we don't want to do. Why are we worried about them taking those jobs? And then, of course, it's very confusing when those same people would say, well, if they're going to come here, they need to speak our language. Why? So they can still better jobs? Jobs that you might actually want? Jobs that don't require as much manual labor and that actually would pay a little bit more? You want them to still those jobs? No, the way I look at it, to me it's very obvious that we are very dependent on undocumented Mexican workers here. And it's not even so much a matter of how it makes us feel, whether it's wrong or right. It's a matter of, if we were to deport every undocumented Mexican worker, send them back across the border, even though Mexico used to be California and Texas and all, and then we took it in a war. So really, Mexico is the United States, and it was theirs to begin with. But even if, aside from all of that, send them all back across the border that we established when we took that part of Mexico, send them back to modern day Mexico, take away that workforce. And what in Los Angeles, my understanding is about 10% of the workforce is undocumented workers, most of them being Mexican. So who's cleaning the hotels? Who's building the houses? Who's painting? Who's cooking the food? Who's doing all these jobs? Take that out. Who's going to do those jobs? The people who are making more money for work that's easier? So I have a comfortable understanding with the black market that we depend on these things. And so imagine we're going to spend $5.7 billion to build a wall. Let's think of this in terms of best case scenarios. Okay? So we build the wall, and finally we see that less undocumented Mexican people are crossing the border. And we ship everybody across the border that doesn't have papers. Okay? So now we don't have new people come in back to the workforce. And that's not just California and Los Angeles. It's the United States. You send them back to Mexico. You took them out of the jobs that we didn't want to begin with. Imagine what that would do to our economy. Now, one of my most popular videos on this channel, I asked a question a while back. I said, why, and I'm in the Nashville area, lived here for a long time. There's a large population of homeless people here in Nashville. never once have I ever seen a Mexican person or Latino that was homeless. Because here in Nashville area, they have people who sell newspapers, and you'll see them at all the intersections, and you'll never see a Mexican person. I never have. I've never seen a Mexican person with a sign saying, please help. Never. Because they're working. They're taking the jobs that we don't want. They're living in close quarters in homes that are much smaller than ours. They're living in closer to poverty levels, but to them, they're not complaining. They're just working hard. So it's really confusing to me. Again, it's easy for me to remove myself from the thought of this being a moral issue as far as, well, they shouldn't be here. They're not documented. But in reality, what happens if all of this came true? We would spend $5.7 billion on a wall that would actually worsen our economy because we're taking out a major part of our invisible workforce, the people that we don't notice because they're in the background. They're those flat characters that we don't pay attention to. Yeah, the undocumented Mexican workers. So you take them out of the workforce, you spend billions of dollars. How is that going to help us? Wrong or right, because they've got papers or not? Imagine what kind of effect that's going to have on us. The truth is, we don't feel comfortable with it, but we definitely depend on undocumented Mexican workers. Now, with all that being said, yes, it is true that, over 100 years ago, when my Mexican great-grandparents came here from Michoacan, Mexico, my understanding is they actually came here legally with papers, and they were asked by the government to come. They went to Buffalo, New York. They were recruited by the United States because they needed their workforce here. So I understand that it could be said, well, that's easy for you to say because it's different when we're talking about undocumented versus legal. There definitely is a difference. And I'm sure there are many Mexican people in America, Mexican Americans, who would actually say that they have a problem with undocumented workers because the ones who got here legally and did it right, and then there's other people who are crossing over legally. But I think that part of this whole thing is that our government is okay with turning a blind eye to not having to really take care of people because they are undocumented and they can just send them back. I think that's part of the understanding that in our system that we've got in America. Now, definitely not saying that I feel okay about that part. I'm saying that it exists. As long as we deny it, it's a problem. If we can have an open conversation about it, then that's really what I'm about, is about building a bridge, not building a wall. What are your comments? What are your thoughts? Right here.